Have you ever wondered what secrets lie beneath the places we pass by every day, unnoticed? What if one quiet town in America held a mystery so deep, so unsettling, that discovering it could change everything you thought you knew about reality? In the heart of the Nevada desert, where the roads stretch endlessly under a sun that seems to never set, lies a town that doesn't appear on most maps, Ashwood. A small cluster of houses, wide empty streets, and a population that barely registers a number in the hundreds. At first glance, Ashwood seemed like every other forgotten desert town, dusty, quiet, and utterly unremarkable. But, as with all places that appear ordinary, there was a shadow beneath the surface. It began in late 1987 when a young cartographer named Ethan Ross was assigned by the U.S. Geological Survey to map the lesser-known territories of Nevada. He was meticulous, perhaps obsessively so, carrying with him every instrument imaginable, surveying tools, cameras, and an array of recording devices. But nothing in his professional experience could prepare him for what he would find in Ashwood. Ethan first noticed the anomaly on an old road map. Ashwood appeared, but the contours of the land surrounding it were off. Roads seemed to vanish into thin air, hills appeared where no hills existed, and landmarks recorded in official documents didn't match reality. The moment he arrived, the town's unusual quietness struck him. Not the usual silence of isolation, but something heavier, as though the very air was muted. Locals were friendly, almost too friendly. They smiled when he asked about the town's history, but redirected the conversation when he inquired about the old Ashwood mine, a site long abandoned but rumored to have been the center of a series of strange events in the 1960s. According to rumors, miners reported hearing voices in the tunnels, seeing figures that vanished when approached, and experiencing equipment failures that defied explanation. Ethan, driven by curiosity, ventured to the mine one afternoon. The entrance was partly collapsed, rusting metal beams protruding like skeletal fingers from the rock. But as he entered, he immediately noticed the difference in temperature, a sudden, unnatural chill that seemed to suck warmth from his body. The flashlight revealed carvings on the walls, faint and indecipherable at first. But as he adjusted his vision, he realized they weren't carvings at all. They were notations, mathematical in nature, sequences that repeated in patterns too precise to be random. Days turned into weeks as Ethan mapped the mine and documented the findings. He discovered a series of tunnels that didn't correspond to any official records, some extending deep below the known bedrock. Strange instruments of unknown origin were embedded in the walls, resembling devices used for measuring electromagnetic frequencies. Even more unnerving were the sounds, soft murmurs, whispers, and occasionally the faint echo of someone speaking in a language he did not recognize. The deeper he went, the more the environment seemed to resist him. His instruments malfunctioned, compasses spun without reason, and electronic devices powered off without explanation. One night, he swore he saw a light moving in the deepest tunnel, a soft glow that seemed alive, almost as if the mine itself was watching. When Ethan shared his findings with experts back in Reno, most dismissed them as hallucinations or equipment error. But a small group of physicists and historians took interest. Among them was Dr. Margaret Leland, a quantum physicist who had previously studied anomalies in the Great Basin area. She theorized that Ashwood could be a thin spot between dimensions, a place where the fabric of reality had weakened. The implications were staggering. If Dr. Leland's theory was correct, Ashwood might not just be a town, it could be a doorway, a location where the rules of our reality were inconsistent, where time and space might behave unpredictably. Ethan continued his investigations despite the warnings. One evening, he discovered a hidden chamber far beneath the mine. Inside, he found objects that defied categorization, ancient tools alongside devices that resembled modern technology, and, most chillingly, preserved manuscripts describing phenomena that sounded eerily similar to modern quantum theories, but dated centuries before these concepts existed. As he carefully examined the manuscripts, he realized the language was a blend of Latin, mathematical notation, and symbols that resembled constellations. One diagram caught his attention, a series of interconnected nodes with arrows that suggested movement not just through space, but through time. And at the center of the diagram was Ashwood itself. The story of Ashwood began to take shape. It wasn't just a town, it was a locus, a point in the Nevada desert where something ancient and intelligent had been experimenting with the laws of reality. The more Ethan discovered, the more he understood that previous visitors, miners, researchers, even locals, had witnessed events they couldn't explain and left too frightened to speak. One night, while Ethan was cataloging his findings, the mine trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the whispers became voices, distinct and clear. They spoke of cycles, of entrances and exits, of guardians who watched the thin spots. Panic-stricken, Ethan fled, but not before noting a sequence of numbers etched into the floor. Coordinates, he realized, not just in geography, but in a temporal sense. Back in Reno, Ethan shared the coordinates with Dr. Leland. When she input them into a simulation, the results were staggering. The coordinates didn't just point to Ashwood, they pointed to multiple points in history, as if the town existed simultaneously in different eras. And according to her calculations, the next alignment would occur in a matter of months. Determined to witness this phenomenon, Ethan and Dr. Leland returned to Ashwood. The town had grown quiet, almost expectant. At the precise moment of alignment, lights flickered across the desert, shadows moved against the wind, and then, for a fleeting instant, the town shifted. Structures seemed to overlay themselves with alternate versions, and fleeting figures from past and future centuries walked silently among them. Ethan recorded everything, knowing the footage might be dismissed as optical illusions or digital trickery. But for him, the reality was undeniable. Ashwood was a nexus, a thin spot where time and space intersected, where past, present, and future overlapped. When the alignment ended, the town returned to its quiet normality. Streets were empty, the mine silent, and the locals appeared as if nothing had happened. But Ethan knew better. He had seen the truth, and it changed everything he thought he knew about reality. He continued to study Ashwood for years, documenting phenomena that defied logic. Visitors who stumbled upon the town often disappeared, returning with stories that seemed like dreams or nightmares. Some said the town itself whispered to them, guiding them towards knowledge or madness. And yet, despite all evidence, Ashwood remained unremarkable to the casual observer. A simple desert town, tucked away in Nevada, its secrets hidden beneath layers of rock and time. Ethan's work eventually reached the Smithsonian, the Pentagon, and private researchers. Each confirmed one terrifying fact: Ashwood was not just a curiosity, it was a warning, a reminder that our understanding of reality was fragile, and that some places, some moments, were far more dangerous and complex than the human mind could comprehend. And so, Ashwood remains, quiet, dusty, ordinary to anyone driving through, but to those who know, it is extraordinary, a living enigma, a place where the very fabric of reality seems thinner than elsewhere, and where the unknown waits, patient, timeless, and watching.
Ethan Ross knew that Ashwood's anomalies couldn't be studied casually. The town seemed to respond to observation, as if aware of who was paying attention. Every electronic device malfunctioned at random intervals. Compasses spun wildly, and even his notebook entries occasionally vanished or changed when he looked back the next day. Determined to document everything, Ethan set up a hidden research base on the outskirts of town. He recruited a small team: Dr. Margaret Leyland, a quantum physicist, Dr. Samuel Torres, a historian specializing in early American settlements, and a young engineer, Mia Chen, who had experience with experimental sensors. Together, they began to record anomalies around the town, in the mine, and in the surrounding desert. The first incident. One evening, Mia set up an infrared camera near the old Ashwood mine entrance. Around 10 p.m., the footage captured something astonishing. A faint figure appeared, tall, humanoid, and translucent, moving with a fluidity that no human could replicate. It disappeared into the rock face. When the team reviewed the footage, the temperature sensors showed a spike of over 15 degrees in a localized area, yet no heat source could be identified. Dr. Torres examined local records and discovered references to the Watchers, cryptic mentions in diaries from miners in the 1930s. Miners spoke of seeing figures that did not belong to the earth and hearing whispers that instructed them to leave the mine or face madness. None of the reports had ever been officially recorded, and most were dismissed as superstitious ramblings. But combined with Ethan's observations, the stories painted a chilling picture. Ashwood had been attracting attention for nearly a century. Temporal distortions. The most shocking discovery came when Ethan and Dr. Leyland experimented with synchronized cameras in the mine. Over several nights, they noticed that objects appeared to move slightly between recordings. Rocks shifted position, tools were found in places they had never been left, and even markings on the walls altered subtly. Dr. Leyland hypothesized that Ashwood existed in a state of temporal flux, where moments could overlap and events from different times could influence each other. The mine itself seemed to act as a conduit, a point where the past, present, and future converged. To test this, Ethan left a sealed notebook in a side chamber with precise instructions. When they returned a week later, the notebook contained additional entries written in his own handwriting, but he had never written them. The entries described events that had not yet occurred: tremors in the mine, unexpected shifts in the town, and even warnings about approaching visitors. The disappearing residents. Soon, the team uncovered something even more disturbing. Long-term residents of Ashwood sometimes vanished for hours or even days without explanation. They returned with no memory of their absence, or occasionally with stories that made no sense. One elderly woman claimed she had walked through a forest of silver trees and met beings who communicated through music. Another teenager spoke of floating through the sky above Ashwood, observing events that hadn't happened yet. The team realized that the town itself might be transporting people through temporal layers, offering glimpses of other realities. The implications were staggering. Ashwood wasn't just unusual geographically, it might be a natural or artificially enhanced bridge across time. The hidden chamber. While exploring a lower level of the mine, Ethan discovered a hidden chamber previously known to anyone. Inside were devices that resembled early 20th century scientific instruments, but fused with unknown materials. Copper coils and gears intertwined with crystalline structures that pulsed faintly with energy. Strange inscriptions on the walls suggested rituals or calculations meant to stabilize the site, though the meaning remained a mystery. The inscriptions mentioned coordinates, sequences, and dates that corresponded not only to Ashwood's location, but also to other sites across the United States. Could Ashwood be part of a larger network of thin spots where reality was fragile? Expected visitors. One night, a group of curious teenagers wandered too close to the mine. Cameras captured their approach, but by the time Ethan and Mia reached them, only two were visible. The third had vanished, leaving behind a faint shimmer in the air. Days later, the missing teenager reappeared in town, disoriented and speaking in a strange dialect that no one recognized. Ethan recorded everything meticulously, noting each anomaly. The town's pattern seemed to follow cycles, alignments of temporal shifts that coincided with planetary positions and certain electromagnetic conditions. During these periods, the anomalies intensified, creating temporary openings between layers of reality. The government interest. Word of the Ashwood anomalies eventually reached higher authorities.
agents quietly arrived in town, claiming to study geological and environmental conditions. They were careful not to interfere directly, but their presence indicated that Ashwood was no longer a local curiosity. It had become a point of national interest. One agent, speaking off the record, warned Ethan and his team, "You don't understand what you're dealing with. People who dig too deep don't always return the same." Despite the warning, the team pressed on. They installed sensors throughout the town and mine, gathering an immense amount of data: temperature fluctuations, electromagnetic readings, audio anomalies, and visual disturbances. Over time, patterns emerged. The town reacted to observers, shifting its reality in subtle ways. It seemed conscious, intelligent, and perhaps even protective of its secrets.
The alignment event. Months of research, hundreds of recorded anomalies, and dozens of first-hand accounts led Ethan and Dr. Leland to prepare for the most critical observation yet: a predicted temporal alignment. According to Dr. Leland's calculations, this was the moment when Ashwood would reveal its deepest secrets, a fleeting window when the town's layers of reality would overlap entirely. The team positioned themselves around the mine, cameras and sensors ready, hearts pounding. The desert sky grew unnaturally still, as if the air itself had thickened. Then, without warning, the ground trembled. Shadows flickered across the empty streets. The mine entrance glowed faintly, casting long, dancing lights onto the walls. Suddenly, figures emerged from the depths, humanoid but not human. They moved fluidly, almost weightless, and seemed to flicker between different shapes and ages. Ethan realized with a chill that these were not illusions. They were temporal echoes, people from the past, present, and possible futures intersecting in a single space. Some figures appeared to be miners from the 1930s, tools in hand, faces frozen in expressions of terror or awe. Others looked futuristic, wearing suits and carrying devices that defied contemporary technology. And then Ethan saw something impossible: himself, standing a few feet away, observing the scene exactly as he was experiencing it now. The messages. As the alignment intensified, the team noticed writing appearing in mid-air, letters, symbols, and numbers forming like holograms. These messages were attempts at communication, warnings, and instructions. Dr. Leland deciphered portions. The thin spots must be guarded. Observation changes reality. Balance must be maintained. Watchers will guide, but interference is dangerous. It became clear that Ashwood was both a laboratory and a guardian point. Some force, ancient, intelligent, perhaps non-human, had been using the town to study or manipulate time and space. The disappearance. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the desert. The team clutched each other, and Ethan's camera caught an impossible sight. A local resident who had been standing calmly nearby simply faded into nothingness. No scream, no movement, just gone. The sensors registered a sudden spike in energy, then nothing. Mia Chen's voice trembled as she whispered, "It's taking them, or moving them." The team realized the horrifying truth. Ashwood wasn't just a passive anomaly, it was active. It chose who remained and who was transported across its hidden layers of reality. And the choices appeared random, yet precise, as if the town itself were alive. The revelation. Then the mine itself reacted. The hidden chamber Ethan had discovered earlier pulsed with energy, revealing a complex network of devices that connected not only to Ashwood, but to other points across the country. Dr. Leland theorized that these were part of a vast grid of thin spots, monitored or maintained by an unknown intelligence. Ethan approached the central device, a crystalline structure that seemed to hum with consciousness.
touching it, he experienced visions, Ashwood in multiple timelines, people walking in and out of realities, catastrophes prevented, discoveries made centuries early. The town was a fulcrum, a critical point where reality could pivot. And then he understood. Ashwood had been guiding humanity, subtly influencing events through these thin spots, protecting the balance of time. But it was selective. Those who noticed too much or interfered could be removed temporarily or permanently from our reality. The aftermath. When the alignment ended, Ashwood returned to its mundane appearance. The desert wind blew across empty streets. The residents who remained acted as if nothing unusual had happened. Ethan and his team were left with irrefutable evidence, recordings, data, and personal experiences that proved the town's anomalous nature. Yet sharing the knowledge proved nearly impossible. Government agents confiscated some footage, skeptical scientists dismissed anomalies, and locals refused to speak. Ethan and Dr. Leland understood the danger. Knowledge of Ashwood could destabilize perceptions of reality, and some secrets were not meant for widespread understanding. Still, they continued to study it quietly, documenting its patterns, its cycles, and the strange events that continued to occur. Every month, subtle shifts reminded them that Ashwood was alive, aware, and patient. The town watched, always, and only revealed its deepest secrets when it deemed the observer worthy or necessary. Epilogue. Years later, Ethan Ross wrote a book about his experiences, titled Ashwood, The Town Out of Time. He detailed the disappearances, the anomalies, the temporal shifts, and the strange figures captured on camera. While many dismissed it as fiction, some researchers found the data compelling. And in the deserts of Nevada, Ashwood remained, quiet, dusty, ordinary to the casual eye. But anyone who steps into its streets or ventures near the mine may feel the subtle pull of something ancient, something watching, something beyond comprehension. A town that exists across time, a nexus of reality, and a mystery that will endure as long as the desert winds blow. Because Ashwood is more than a town. Ashwood is a warning, and Ashwood is alive.